So good day. We're learning the Maamar Byom Ashtei. We're at chapter 9. Yeah. Is it chapter 9? No. Where are we at? We're at
We did 9 yesterday.
right. Chapter 10.
Sure.
Chapter 10, so page 253. So just to recap, in the previous chapter, the Rebbe introduces a saying of the Alter Rebbe, that the Alter Rebbe said, I don't want your Gan Eden, I don't want your Elam Haba, all I want is you. And the Rebbe says that this symbolizes, this expresses the same idea as the Medrash says, Ano Nosiv Malka. That the shrewd person, this Pikach, he says, I don't want your effluence, your Gashmias, I just want you, the king. This is what we learned yesterday, Bekitzer. Let's continue now on that. He even goes a step further. 253, chapter 10. V'yesh lahaisiv biur b'shayches. We can add clarity to see the connection between Anonos Malka. I will take the king as my patron. Li'ava, to the love expressed by David HaMelech in Tehillim, Mili Bashamayim, that the only thing I have in heaven is you, and I want you. Sheroitze ba'erein sof, David HaMelech wants Hashem, nothing short of God. So the Rebbe says, let's add clarity. We can add clarity to this association between the two concepts. By prefacing that the primary mode of what we call this of worshiping the stars and the constellations, it is they took an intermediary and instead of looking at it as a ancillary aid, they looked at it, you see the dash, the line, le'ikar. They saw that as a primary aspect of God, of Hashem. There's a difference between an intermediary, which we call in Hebrew memutza, to it being an ikar. Right? Moshe Rabbeinu is a memutza, is an intermediary between the Yidden and the Hashem. God forbid to think that Moshe Rabbeinu is ikar. Ikar is God, Hashem. So the Rebbe says the mistake made, Moshe, by those that worship the sun, the moon. And why did they worship the sun and the moon? Because in the Torah it says, Hashem says himself in the Torah, writes in the Torah, sweetness of produce, good produce coming from the earth comes from the sun, baking on the soil. And sweetness of a cucumber comes from the moon somehow, from the light of the moon. So they said, if that's the case, that means the sun and the moon have something that God gives them, and they can decide to make it sweet or not sweet, to make it taste this way or taste that way. So therefore, when I get cucumbers, and I'm eating cucumbers, and I like the taste of cucumbers, they taste good, it's because of the moon. So the moon deserves recognition. In other words, they looked at the moon as an ikar, not just an intermediary. That's idolatry. But that's where they were coming from. That's what he says here. Let's continue. So too regarding the stars and the constellations. The truth is they're only an intermediary. In the analogy that the Rebbe brought earlier in the Maamar, Gazen, they're like an axe in the hand of the chopper. Moshe, will anyone say that when you take an axe to chop trees, to chop wood, the axe has independence? No. It takes your hand with your koyach to lift the axe and swing the axe. And if there's no koyach and there's no hand, your hand, the human intervention using the axe can be the nicest and the strongest. It's not going to accomplish anything. So the axe is only a byproduct, a tool, an instrument to fulfill the wishes of the person who wants to chop wood now. So the Rebbe says so too, regarding the stars and the constellations, everything that they offer the world, and they offer much to the world, be it, lighting up the world, this, that, whatever the case, it's only garzen biyad hachotzef, like the axe in the hands of the chopper. That's what he says here in the parentheses, garzon. Shal yodam, let's continue in imsheches hashpo. Through the stars and the constellation, the effluence from Hashem is filtered through it. But those that worship them, they consider them to be shehu ikar, their primary. And that's heresy. That's avodah zarah. So, number one, the Rebbe says, the first mistake that is made by those that worship the sun, the moon, and the constellations is that they gave a erroneous position to them. An erroneous, not only in the sense of just an error and we go on, but actually idolatry. Now the Rebbe says they also made a mistake regarding the effluence that comes from them. Look what he says. And so too regarding the effluence, the material effluence, and hashpoah coming through them. Next page. Shehashpoas hagashmias, the impact of the effluence, he b'chdei sheyishtamshu b'hem la'avodas Hashem. Menashe, why does Hashem give us gashmias? It's to serve Him. What happens with those that worship the stars and the constellations? They consider as a gashmias leikar. They make the material the primary. In other words, they say it's not just a means to an end, it's an end in and of itself. Isser, you hear that? That's a big mistake. And the Rebbe is going to say now that mistake comes from giving credence to the stars and the constellations. Look in the parentheses. That's why the worshipers want the effluence from the negative side, because they want a lot of material abundance. Canal Siv Dalet. In other words, if you seek serving God through Gashmias, then what's the difference if it's a lot or a little? The main thing is the Nakuda, serving God. If Hashem wants me to serve God in a grandiose way with lots of Gashmias, He'll give it to me. And if not, I'm just as happy. That means I don't need that much but to serve Hashem. But if your perspective is not the Gashmias as a means to an end, but an end to itself, then you want a lot of Gashmias. Push it. You want to indulge. So indulging in Gashmias in material matter is a demonstration that your paradigm is not God, but self. So therefore, the more I have, the more I can indulge. V'hinei hagiluyim, the manifestations, the revelations, gam hagiluyim achinayim, the greatest manifestations of Hashem, hatachlis hu loy behem atzmo. The purpose, the objective, is not in them themselves. Vehem brakem tsoyi, they are only an intermediary, shal yodom, that through them, tishlem hakavona pnimius, the inner purpose should be fulfilled. The dir betachtoinim, top of page 255, making a home for Hashem. This is a general statement which is important to know. In Chassidus, we talk about etzem and gilui, essence and manifestation, or essence and revelation. So it's explained in Chassidus, and the Rebbe here brings it very briefly, that the purpose of the manifestation, the giluyim, is not for the gilui itself. Here's an example. And it's an example that's maybe going to touch deeply within us if we think about it. You come to a Rebbe, any Rebbe, and you see the Rebbe, you see the Chassidim, you see the environment. The Giluyim, the revelation is how they behave. Do they push? Do they shove? Are they clean? Are they dirty? Is it smell? Does it not smell? Is it lively or is it boring? Whatever the situation is, in every Chassidus and every, right? Those are manifestations, Giluyim. If you make of the Giluyim the Ikar, then you're on one tract. And guess what? That tract is not the tract of Rebbe and Chassid. Rebbe and Chassid is not about Giluyim, it's about Etzem. This is such a hard thing to communicate and for sure to feel. But this is what we got, at least we got. This is what we had osmosis, by osmosis. You picked this up being in the circle. I think one of you was in one of 770's wash machine circles there, either Slichas, I forget, one of you guys told me, I forget now, right? When you're in the circle, it's not about, it shouldn't be about, I danced this way. I was pushed this way. Then you're, no problem. That's an experience, and a good experience, or a bad experience, but it's not Rebbe. It's not Etzem. It's Giluyim. And if you make your relationship with the tzaddik about the Giluyim, then you're missing out on the Etzem experience. So there are plenty of Hasidim who make the Giluyim the primary aspect of their relationship. And that's, by the way, why you have people traveling worldwide to this cave and that cave. I should say that's part of the reason. I'm not going to say, right? In other words, I'm looking for an experience. I want to be turned on. I'm home in Bet Shemesh or in Williamsburg, and I have a Rebbe there, and I have a whatever, right? But it don't do it for me. If I travel all the way to Ukraine, or yesterday was the Melech's yard site, the Melech, the Grace of Tzaddik, so many people went. I feel good. a whole chevra went, right? You have to ask yourself a question. Are you going there because of self? You need to feel good? You need to be turned on? Or are you going there because of you believe in this tzaddik and you want this kesher? See? That is the same thing we're learning in this Maamar right now. Is 1 second. Give me 1 second. I know you have what to say and I want to hear it. Etzem is beyond description. So if someone says, what did you feel there? What did you understand there? And you know what the answer is? I didn't think about that. That wasn't why I went. I just wanted to be. Well, why can't you be at home? Well, happens to be that the Rebbe and the Hasidim is in Slonim. The Rebbe and the Hasidim is in Boston. Whatever, in Lubavitch. Yeah, if I'm on a higher level, I could be in Borough Park and in Bet Shemesh and feel the same thing. But I'm not at that level. So I travel to a Rebbe or to a caver to be. So when someone asks you, what did you get out of it? The whole question is erroneous. I didn't go there I didn't go there for that. I don't have to go there for that. I'm going there to be. And if you're not going there to be, then you're grabbing the straws. And the straws is dancing and singing and crying and laughing and eating. Very nice. Reb Nachman. They say Reb Nachman says, whoever comes to me, Rosh Hashanah will be forgiven, all right? So there too. If you believe in this tzaddik, and you believe in his words, and you believe this to be true, it's to be. There's nothing, that's all. It's not because there's 30, 40,000 Jews, therefore I'm turned on. Yeah, plenty of people need that. And plenty of people do tshuva because of that. I'm not knocking that. But we have to know the difference between the Giluyim and Atzmos. And that Giluyim is an end to a means, not a means to an end. Now it's your turn, Isser.
So I for sure understand and believe that there are many Hasidim who are attaching themselves to the Giluyim. But you seem to present it as a mutually exclusive, it's one or the other. And I think there are people who both go to the Rebbe because they want the hiskashrus, but they also need they need that motivation, they need that stimulation in their own avoda. And I don't think that it's mutually exclusive. They need both. They need to feel that they're part of that great group of people, but at the same time also that they're forming his kashrus with the Rebbe. I don't think it's mutually exclusive.
It's not mutually exclusive if that's the perspective. What you said now, I would agree with if that's the way a person is thinking and knows that and doesn't confuse the two. I was talking about when there's a confusion. Mm-hmm. When there's a confusion, and there is confusion.
Yeah, I agree.
In other words, when you ask someone on the street, I don't know how it's in Eretz Yisrael, I think it's probably the same. And I talk to people freely and openly. I say, what kind of chassid are you? Everybody. Like, what do you mean everybody? Which Rebbe do you identify with? Everybody. Okay, so you're in other words, the Baal Shem Tov. So why did the Baal Shem Tov have the Maggid? The Maggid had Talmidim. The Talmidim, each one had a derech and avodas Hashem. Obviously, the derech of the Baal Shem Tov, as seen by the Maggid and his Talmidim, was and kulam kadoshim, kulam mahuvim. Everyone's beloved. Everyone's holy. And I do agree with you. And I thought I said it, but I do agree with you that most people need that. But my issue and what I was trying to clarify is that don't confuse the two. And Isser, you know where I see the difference between the two, whether it's a confusing situation or it's authentic, is when things don't go the way I feel, do you drop out? Do you drop out of that Hasidus? That's where you see whether. So if, and I have to say this, if it's coming from the soul that a person's neshama is thirsty for more than he's getting now, that's legitimate and very important. And people go through that. In other words, we have a community here, and you have in Eretz Yisrael, Mayoni Yisrael, right? We have a little bit of that here. And I see these Jungelite, these youngsters that get married and they learned in Eretz Yisrael and they were part of the Mayoni and all that, right? I mean, they grew up with its bells and boviv, satver, vishnitz, blah, 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 blah. Something was for them, wasn't enough for them. And they want to connect to Hashem better. And they happen to find it in whatever their new Hasidus becomes. In this case, it's Chabad. That's an acceptable thing. Because it's the neshama. And so I guess I could summarize what I'm saying is that the connection is a soul connection. It's a neshama connection that drives the person. So the giluyim, the inspiration that you're talking about, should be from the perspective of essence, soul. No, soul driving inspiration, not inspiration driving soul. Because if inspiration drives soul, then when you lose your inspiration, there's no soul left. You understand what I'm saying? There's no soul left. In other words,
yeah,
okay.
Yeah. I'm thinking of a tangential topic, which I'd like to bring about at some point, which is not directly negated to this, but I'm going to put it in your head so we can put it in your pocket and maybe bring it some other time.
Okay.
Which is the concept of it's a whole package. You can't pick and choose.
Exactly.
You pick a derech and avodas Hashem and that's it. Okay, that's one side. Al yad acher, like I say, I'm a misfit because I don't fit into anything, which makes me feel comfortable with everything. Meaning I can take the best of all, but I don't have to buy the entire package, including the parts which are shtiyut. Because every group has things which are, not pure in avodas Hashem. That they're, conformist because of whatever. But so Rebbetzin Silver said, you're not a misfit, you're an omnifit. But let's bring about it at some point in the future.
Okay,
because
good.
I feel it's an important thing for people to
absolutely
figure out where they are.
Absolutely,
I'm still figuring out where I am.
And that's good. That's good that we are on a derech and we're thinking about it, and fabring about it, talking about it, arguing about it. That's healthy discussion. Rabbi Salvation, I've told you, he believed that friction is part of avodas Hashem. And he said that was really the sheet of brisk. Friction is not a negative. Friction is healthy. Who are you? Why are you? Where are you? And guess what? Tomorrow it could be whatever. Okay, let's get back to the text, okay? But I see that you're following. Okay. We're on page 255. I see it's here. Let's go. When your choice is only the manifestation, and the manifestation as an end to itself, v'lo ba'or ensof, and not choosing the infinite Hashem, hainu shemachshiv oisem leikir, you make out of the revelation and manifestation. And I'll use more practical word. The inspiration is, the ikar is primary to you. Efsher liyos nesinas makom. Look at this. It is possible for there to be sheyachshiv gama emtsoyim, that one will consider also the intermediaries, the kechavim, mazolis, hashefa gashmi, the stars, the constellations, and the physical effluence, liikar. You walk away saying, that's the point we just said before. That what becomes ikar? Inspiration. So if I get inspired, if I feel I get inspired, I'm there. And if I'm not, I'm not. And you know, when I'm reading this, I'm saying to myself, like, Fabrengens, Fabrengen. Every Monday and Thursday is Fabrengens. And, you know, I'm at a point in my life, I'm a little older now, you know, I don't run to all Fabrengens. I run to very few, in fact, because they're a waste of time. At the same time, who am I to feel that? Just go and be. You don't have to be there for 4 hours or 3 hours, but just be in the presence of Yidden sitting together. If and when you get bored or you disagree and you don't want to make a ruckus, leave. But be. And say, guess what? Sometimes you'll actually be, and you'll be inspired, and you'll be turned on, you'll be motivated. I talk to myself about this because it's, as I get older, I look around like people are talking about what happened, Hey Tavis, right, with the Svarim in 1985, and they weren't even born. I say, I'm going to go sit and listen to this guy when he wasn't even born, and I lived through it. But that's a wrong attitude. That's a gaiva attitude. Because he could collect information and study the topic and get into it, and he could master it. You know, I'm just giving an example. So it depends, you know, what is ikar and what's tafel, what's primary, what's ancillary. Let's continue. Based on this, we could explain the some non-Jews worship the sun, the moon. But Jews, Yidden, don't serve only God. Who? It's because non-Jews, their primary connection is what we call the externality of God's will. Look, the Rebbe says in the parentheses here, Moshe, what does it mean, the externality of God's will? When you do that, when you want something, not for the thing itself, but for something else. Right? Chavre, if we had it our way, we would be learning and davening, and right, we have to go to work. The shir finishes, Isha gets into his car, and he has to go to the clinic. Right? Parnosa. No, he doesn't do that. Okay. Or Hillel's not here sometimes. He has appointments that he's serving and helping people. And that's important. But at the same time, in other words, it's chitzonius compared to the inner drive and will. The inner drive and the whatever, I'm just giving examples. If they're wrong examples, choose other examples. But wages. The wages given to us is necessary, but is that really what I'm interested in? The wages? No. I'm interested in what I'm doing, hopefully. Like I told you, you know, Dennis Prager once was at Sinai Temple over there on Wilshire Boulevard in Los Angeles. There was 1,000 young people, and he asked them who can raise their hand and say they love what they do. And some hands went up, some hands, not everybody's hands, of course. And then it said, and who can raise their hand and say they love what they do and they get paid for it too? Even less hands went up. So it's a big bracha if you could raise your hand and say, not only do I love what I do, but I get paid for it too, which is icing on the cake. The Rebbe says here, there's something called chitzonius haratzon and pnimius haratzon. Chitzonius is like the wages. It's not what I really want. It's I need my family, for others, etc. Let's continue. In this level of the external will, next page, 256. This is the source for the non-Jewish people. They don't realize this, that their will for influence is a means to an end. They think it's an end in itself. That is idolatry. That is wrong. That is not Jewish. A derivative of this thinking is next page, that the Goyim consider the intermediaries, the Chol Mokum Li'ikar, as a primary. They don't look at it as an intermediary, but rather a primary, and that's idolatry. Excuse me. V'asherish the Yisrael, the root of the Yidden, who mipnimius haratzon. Our source is from the inner will. Shemitzat pnimius haratzon ein nesinas makoim. There is no place le'ez the inyan acher for anything else, except that it's a means to an end, gashmias, and we come from pnimius haratzon. V'lochein yesh li Yisrael ha'akara. Therefore, Yidden have the recognition, shakechovu mazolis, next page, that the stars and the constellations, hembrakem tsoi, they're only an intermediary, kigarzam biyad, like the axe in the hand of the chopper, v'chein hashefa gashmi. And this means that they think also, they know that the gashmi is the material influence, who rak b'shvil avodas Hashem, is from one purpose only. They only serve God in the words of the Medrash, Anonosiv Malka, I want Hashem as the patron. So this chapter, Chevra, is not just a chapter in a Maamar, it's a whole attitude in looking the right and correct way on what we're doing, what we should be doing, and who we are. And of course, it goes back to that discussion before about the Rebbe and Chassid, and and the good, the bad, and the ugly, choosing and picking, and that whole. If you see something as a means to an end, then you understand the relationship. If you see Gashmias as an end for itself, then there's issues. There's issues, and if they don't come out today, they come out later. And I'm telling you, it's badik imanusa. So the healthiest thing is to, like Yisra said, to really have clear in your mind what you're looking for and what is reality, and what and as a Yid, what the Torah says. At the end of the day, Chevra, it's the Torah that guides us. So I could feel this way, and he can feel this way, she can feel this way. What does the Torah say? I spoke to a very bright person earlier before this year, and he said about something, the Rebbe and a grandfather of his, where the Rebbe really trusted him, but at the same time he criticized him. And the Rebbe wrote to him, basically, there's a Shulchan Aruch. So the fact that I trust you is a personal thing between you and I, but there is Hashem. And if Hashem says you need to do A, B, and C, then it's not relevant that I trust you and that you're committed to me. What does the Torah say? And if the Torah says to you, seek a bezdin, go to a rav, go to a mashpia, then that's what you're obligated to do. Regardless, but it's you and I. Hey, we're soul buddies. They used to say in yeshiva, not clean, I don't want to say, but like, we grew up together with the same stuff, we know each other from the diapers, you know what I'm saying? It's like, so if we know each other, we're buddies, we'll take a beer and we'll sit and just drink a beer and hang out and talk honestly. That's very nice, very important, but doesn't mean it's necessarily what the Torah says. The Torah says, wait a second, if in this situation, you need to go to a Rav, because a Rav is objective. Torah is objective. So the fact that you guys are soulmates and all that, it's wonderful as far as a relationship, but there's a Torah. So that would also, I think, fall into this whole discussion here. Someone just called me, if I can do some consultation for them. Two brothers have a business. They, Baruch Hashem, built it up, making a lot of money. And now, all of a sudden, the wives, a $1,400 dinner. $1,400. The other wife says, what are you taking out of the kuppah? $1,400. Well, it's our money. What's the problem? It's our money, so you should check with us. So here it is, husband, wives, two partners, everything's going well. All of a sudden, the trust has been breached. Not so much between the two brothers, but between wives. Go to a bezdin. Go to an arbitrator, a mediator, who you both accept and make it work. Al pi Torah. So this is very important. That it's uncomfortable. Sometimes, why can't we work it out ourselves? Well, if the Torah says you need a guide and you need a das Torah, there's no discussion. There's no discussion. You're my chassid, I'm your rebbe. And by the way, these things happen with the rebbe and chassidim too. I've heard this too. Where, hey, you're my rebbe, and all of a sudden, I know someone here. He left a certain chassidus because the person who was preparing for Pesach, helping the rebbe prepare for Pesach, didn't want this other fellow who was becoming helpful to the Rebbe to take away his position. So he maneuvered to get the Rebbe to kind of say, I don't need your help now. I already have help. Again, like, what does the Torah say? What does the Torah say? Now, you're blaming your Rebbe for siding with a certain God by a certain Shabbos, right? And excluding you. What does the Torah say? I don't know. What does the Torah say? So find out. Chevra, have a great day. We'll see everyone tomorrow. Moshe, Mazel Tov. Moshe had a pidyon haben.
Thank you.
And Mazel Tov to Moshe and to the pidyon haben. And Baruch Hashem, I told him yesterday that he was in America and he got back the Chazdei Hashem during this situation. So it shows that your trip was min hashamayim. To me, that's a sign from heaven, because he was so close to not making it back on time, right? And the Eibishter made it otherwise. So that means you were on the right path. I'm serious. I really believe it's a sign. I'm just saying, in life, you got to pay attention to the greater things that happen, saying, okay, not to go around and say, I'm God's man. That's not what we're talking about. So anyway, Mazel Tov, Moshe, and only good things, and Psudas Toivos, and we'll see everyone tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Yes, sir. Thank you.